You know how people say your family should be the ones you trust the most? That family comes before anyone else, and no matter what happens, they'll always have your back. Well, that belief died for me the day I found out my own parents had stolen everything I'd worked for. Not strangers. Not some scammer on the internet. Not even a shady friend looking to make a quick buck. My parents. The two people who were supposed to protect me, teach me right from wrong, and show me how to walk through life with honesty. And what did they use it for? Not to pay bills. Not to cover an emergency. Not to keep the roof over our heads. They drained my savings, years of sweat and sacrifice, just to buy my sister a shiny new car. And the worst part? They didn't even feel guilty. They smiled. They acted like I should be proud. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They thought I'd just roll over, accept it, and let them walk all over me like they always had. But they were wrong. What I did next? Let's just say I didn't just take back what was mine. I took back even more. If you are enjoying this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey of betrayal and unexpected revenge. I grew up in a family of 4. It was me, my younger sister Claire, and our parents. On the surface, we were ordinary. A little house in the suburbs, 2 working parents, the typical sibling rivalry you see in every family. But underneath that picture-perfect image, things weren't as equal as they seemed. From as early as I can remember, Claire was the golden child. She was the sunshine of the family. Everything she did was special, amazing, or so bright. If she painted something with her crayons, it went on the fridge for weeks. If she got a B on a test, Mom would say, "She tried her best, that's what matters." Meanwhile, I was the responsible one. The one who was expected to keep things together. The one they could lean on when things got tough. If I brought home an A, the reaction wasn't excitement, it was expected. If I cleaned my room, did my chores, or kept my grades up, it was just what I was supposed to do. And if Claire forgot to do something, guess who got blamed for not reminding her? Me. It wasn't that they didn't love me, but it always felt like their affection for Claire was effortless, while for me, it had to be earned. By the time I was 15, I decided I wasn't going to rely on anyone else to build the life I wanted. I got my first part-time job at a local grocery store. Stocking shelves, bagging groceries, pushing carts in the freezing cold. It wasn't glamorous, but every dollar I made mattered to me. While most kids my age spent their money on clothes or video games, I tucked mine away. I opened a savings account and told myself, this is going to mean something one day. That job led to others. I mowed lawns in the summer, shoveled driveways in the winter, even tutored kids at school for a little extra cash. By the time I turned 18, I had nearly $20,000 saved up. That money represented more than just numbers on a screen. It was proof of every long shift, every sore back, every Friday night I skipped going out with friends because I wanted to save instead of spend. I had plans for that money. Big plans. College tuition, maybe the down payment on a small house, or even just a safety net so I wouldn't have to struggle the way my parents sometimes did. That savings gave me a sense of independence, of pride. I thought it would also earn me some respect from my family. But I couldn't have been more wrong. Because while I was learning the value of hard work and sacrifice, Claire was being handed everything on a silver platter. She never worked a day in her life during high school. Mom and Dad gave her an allowance bigger than what I earned in a week. New clothes for every dance. A new phone every couple of years. She didn't even have to clean her room half the time. Mom would step in and do it for her. I didn't resent her at first. I figured, maybe that's just what happens when you're the older sibling. You pave the way, and the younger one gets it easier. But over time, it started to sting. Especially when my parents used to say things like, "You'll be fine, you're tougher than she is," or "You don't need as much help as Claire does." They said it like it was a compliment, but what it really meant was, "We'll always choose her over you." It built this unspoken hierarchy in the house. Claire was the star. I was the safety net. She was the one who got rewarded. I was the one who got relied on. And I thought, maybe, just maybe, when I grew up and they saw how responsible I was, they'd finally recognize my efforts. That's why I guarded my savings so fiercely. That account was mine. Untouchable. Proof that I could stand on my own 2 feet without anyone's help. I never imagined my own parents would be the ones to rip it away from me. For years, I believed that savings account was sacred. It was the one thing in my life nobody could take from me. But one ordinary morning, that illusion shattered. It started the day after my 19th birthday. I logged into my account on my phone, mostly out of habit. I didn't plan on spending anything. I just liked to see the numbers there. It gave me peace of mind, like a safety blanket. But instead of the familiar balance I'd worked so hard for, nearly $20,000, my screen showed less than 500. At first, I thought it was a glitch. A bank error. My chest tightened as I refreshed the app again and again, hoping it would fix itself. But it didn't. The money was gone. Years of my life, erased in an instant. I remember sitting there, frozen, my mind racing. Had I been hacked? Had my card been stolen? I scrolled through the transaction history, and that's when the truth started to sink in. There it was. A single withdrawal. One massive transfer, straight from my account into another. Not small purchases, not suspicious charges from across the world. Just one clean, deliberate withdrawal. And the name on the transfer? It wasn't some stranger. It wasn't some scammer. It was my father. That night, I walked into the kitchen, the weight of that empty account burning in my chest. Mom was cooking dinner, humming like it was just another normal day. Dad was at the table reading the paper. Claire was scrolling through her phone, smirking at something I couldn't see. I put my phone on the table in front of my dad, showing him the bank statement. My voice shook with anger as I asked, "Where's my money?" He barely flinched. He set down the paper, glanced at the screen, then at me, and said the words that made my blood boil. "We used it for something important. For the family." Important? For the family? I demanded to know what that meant, and Claire couldn't hold it in anymore. She looked up, grinning, and said, "He means my car." That's when I noticed the keys dangling from her hand. A brand new car key, with the dealership tag still attached. My sister. The golden child. She had been gifted a shiny, brand new car, bought with every penny I had saved since I was 15. Their justification. I couldn't believe it. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. But what came next was worse than the theft itself. It was the
Dad
way they
said, "You'll be
justified it.
fine."
You're responsible. You'll save it back in no time. Mom chimed in, "Claire needed it more than you do. She's starting college, she has places to be. You don't need a car right now." Every word felt like a slap in the face. They didn't even see it as wrong. To them, my years of work were nothing compared to Claire's needs. And Claire? She didn't even try to hide her smugness. She leaned back in her chair, twirling the keys around her finger, and said, "Thanks, big bro. You really came through for me." She said it like it was a joke. Like I was supposed to laugh along with them. I lost it. My voice cracked as I shouted at them, telling them how hard I'd worked, how many nights I'd sacrificed, how many times I'd turned down fun just to save that money. But my parents didn't back down. Dad raised his voice and said, "Enough. Don't be selfish. Family sacrifices for each other. That's what you did. You sacrificed for your sister. Selfish. That's what they called me. Not them, for stealing. Not Claire, for taking without asking. Me, for daring to be angry." At that moment, something inside me snapped. I realized I wasn't just the overlooked child. I was the backup plan. The resource they could tap into whenever Claire wanted something. To them, I wasn't a son. I was a wallet. A few days later, I saw the car in the driveway for the first time. It wasn't just any car. It was a sleek, silver sedan, brand new, with the temporary plates still on. The kind of car that screamed privilege. The kind of car I had dreamed of buying for myself one day, with my money. Claire was outside polishing it, blasting music from the speakers, calling her friends over to take rides. She acted like she had earned it, bragging about how generous her parents were. Not once did she mention that every mile she drove was funded by me. I stood there watching her, my fists clenched. Each laugh, each rev of the engine, each photo she snapped with her new toy felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. That was the moment I swore to myself, I wasn't just going to take this lying down. I wasn't going to let them steal from me and walk away smiling. That night, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling. Rage pulsed through me, but beneath it was something sharper, resolve. I thought about every hour I had worked, every dollar I had saved, every sacrifice I had made. And I realized something. If I was strong enough to build that savings once, I was strong enough to do it again. But this time, I wouldn't just rebuild. This time, I'd take back control. They thought I'd roll over. They thought I'd stay the obedient son, the reliable backup, the safety net. But they were wrong. I started planning. Not just how to recover my money, but how to make sure they never saw me as weak again. And when I finally made my move, they would regret ever thinking they could steal from me. Because when I took back what was mine, I didn't stop there. When your own parents steal from you, when your sister flaunts what's rightfully yours, you have two choices: collapse under the weight of betrayal, or rise above it. That night, lying awake in the dark, I chose the second option. If they wanted to treat me like nothing more than a wallet, then fine, I'd show them just how dangerous it was to underestimate me. I didn't lash out right away. Revenge, I knew, couldn't be rushed. If I screamed, if I threatened, if I demanded the money back, they'd brush it off like they always did. Dad would call me ungrateful, Mom would guilt-trip me about family sacrifices, and Claire would mock me until she was bored. No, if I wanted real payback, I had to be smarter. Patient. Precise. So instead of yelling, I started watching. Listening. Waiting. And the more I paid attention, the more I realized something. Claire's new car wasn't just a toy. It was her lifeline. She used it for everything: driving to campus, meeting her friends, even short trips to the store that she could have walked. She bragged about it non-stop on social media, posting selfies behind the wheel like she was some celebrity. Her identity was wrapped around that shiny, silver sedan. Take that away, and she'd unravel. But I wasn't after her car alone. No. That was just the beginning. I started doing research. Late at night, after everyone was asleep, I sat on my laptop mapping out every angle. I learned about car financing, insurance policies, registration laws. I looked into what would happen if payments weren't made, or if the car was reported stolen. And here's the kicker, since my parents had used my account for the down payment, my name was tied to part of the paperwork. Not fully, but enough that I had leverage. Enough to cause chaos if I wanted to. That knowledge gave me power. For the first time, I wasn't just a victim, I was holding cards they didn't even know existed. Every day, I kept up the act. I smiled faintly at dinner. I answered when spoken to. I didn't bring up the money again. On the surface, I looked like I was moving on. But inside, every laugh Claire gave, every smug toss of her keys, every excuse my parents made, it all added fuel to the fire. And then, one night, the perfect opportunity presented itself. It was a Friday evening. Claire had gone out with her friends and stumbled back home hours later, tipsy and careless. She tossed her bag onto the counter, her phone slipping halfway out. Curiosity, or maybe instinct, pushed me to look. And what I saw made my pulse quicken. Her group chat was open, and the conversation was filled with pictures of her bragging about her free car. She wasn't even pretending it was a gift from her parents. She was openly laughing at me, calling me the family ATM and the dumb older brother who paid for a ride. My jaw tightened. My fingers itched to throw her phone across the room. But instead, I memorized every word, every screenshot. Proof. Evidence. If there was ever a doubt in my mind about getting revenge, it disappeared right then. Over the next few weeks, I built my plan. Piece by piece. First, I quietly reached out to the bank. I asked questions about the transfer, careful not to reveal too much, just gathering information. I learned what rights I had, what disputes I could file, and how deep my father had dipped into my account. Second, I started saving again. Not for long-term security this time, but for flexibility. I picked up extra shifts, took side gigs, even sold a few things I didn't need. Money, I realized, wasn't just cash, it was fuel for whatever move I was about to make. And third, I studied Claire's patterns. When she drove, where she went, how she treated that car like her golden ticket. The more I watched, the clearer it became, the car was her pride. If I could twist that pride into humiliation, if I could turn her gift into her downfall, then my revenge would cut deeper than any theft ever could. But I'll be honest, there were moments when doubt crept in. I'd catch myself staring at my parents, wondering if maybe I was going too far. Maybe they were right, maybe I was being selfish. And then I'd remember the hollow look of my bank account. The smugness in Claire's grin. The words family sacrifices thrown at me like a weapon. No. This wasn't selfish. This was justice. The breaking point came one afternoon when Claire pulled into the driveway, blasting music with her windows down. She stepped out, laughing with her friends, and said loudly enough for me to hear. Best car ever, and I didn't even have to lift a finger for it. Big bro took care of me. Her friends laughed. One of them even clapped her on the back like she was some kind of genius. I stood at my window, watching. My blood ran cold. That was it. That was the final straw. The plan was no longer just an idea. It was a mission. That night, I sat at my desk with a notebook open. I started sketching it out step by step. How I'd take advantage of my name on the paperwork. How I'd make sure Claire's perfect little car became more of a curse than a blessing. How I'd recover more than what was stolen, and make sure my family never underestimated me again. Every line I wrote down brought me a strange calm. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't drowning in anger. I was in control. And control is the sharpest weapon of all. A plan is just words on paper until the first move is made. And once I made mine, There was no turning back. I had spent weeks studying every angle, memorizing Claire's schedule, collecting proof of what my parents had done. Every step was calculated. Every decision sharpened by the fire of betrayal. And finally, the day came when preparation had to give way to execution. It began quietly. Subtle moves, unnoticed at first. But like cracks in a dam, they spread quickly, and soon the whole structure was ready to collapse. The first step was reclaiming the money. Not all of it, yet. But enough to make a dent. I walked into the bank with a calm expression, carrying the screenshots, the transfer records, the paper trail of what my father had done behind my back. My voice didn't waver as I explained the unauthorized movement of funds, framing it not as family business, but as theft. Cold, factual theft. The banker gave me a look, sympathy mixed with unease. But rules were rules. They opened a case, froze part of the disputed funds, and began their investigation. My parents wouldn't know immediately, but soon, they'd feel the ripple. Their comfortable cushion of borrowed money was about to disappear. That was strike one. And it was only the beginning. Claire's car was her crown. Her proof that she was untouchable. That was why I targeted it next. It wasn't difficult. My name, though small on the paperwork, was enough to stir problems. A single phone call to the financing company, polite, careful, disguised as a concerned cosigner, and the seed of doubt was planted. I told them I was disputing the down payment. That I believed fraud had been committed. That my name had been attached to documents without full consent. Did I exaggerate? Maybe. Did I bend the truth? Absolutely. But it didn't matter. Bureaucracy doesn't care about family drama, it cares about signatures, legality, and risk. The representative assured me they'd look into it. I hung up, a thin smile tugging at my lips. Claire had no idea that the very foundation of her freedom, her shiny silver car, was starting to crumble beneath her. But revenge isn't satisfying if it's invisible. I wanted them to feel it. To see the walls closing in. That's why I baited Claire. One evening, I left my laptop open on the kitchen table, angled just enough for her to notice the tabs on the screen, bank emails, dispute forms, a file folder labeled car payments. I watched from the hallway as her eyes scanned it. The smugness drained from her face, replaced by something I hadn't seen before, fear. She slammed the laptop shut and stormed off, muttering curses under her breath. Good. Let her stew. Let her wonder how much I knew, how much control I had. The beauty of fear is that it does half the work for you. It all came to a head 2 weeks later. I came home to chaos. Mom was pacing the living room, her voice sharp with panic. Dad sat with his hands in his hair, muttering to himself. And Claire was crying. Not the fake crocodile tears she used when she wanted attention. Real tears. Her car had been repossessed. The financing company, spooked by the dispute, had frozen the account until the matter was resolved. Payments were blocked. Insurance flagged the situation as compromised. And just like that, the keys were no longer hers. Her lifeline, gone. She screamed at my parents, demanded answers, blamed them for not handling it. They shouted back, furious, but beneath their anger was a truth they couldn't deny. The house of cards they built on my money was collapsing. And I was the one pulling the strings. It didn't take long before the storm turned on me. Did you do this? Dad barked, his face red with fury. Mom's voice shook with desperation. How could you betray your own family like this? Claire glared at me, her eyes burning with hate. You ruined everything. You're sick. I stood there, calm, steady, almost serene. For the first time in months, I wasn't the cornered one. I wasn't the victim. I was in control. "You stole from me," I said, my voice low but firm. "You laughed at me. You thought I'd stay silent forever. But silence has a limit. And you reached it." The room fell quiet. No one moved. My words lingered, heavy, undeniable. For once, they had nothing to say. The weeks that followed were a slow burn of consequences. The bank refunded part of the stolen money to my account, forcing my parents into uncomfortable financial strain. Bills they thought were covered suddenly weren't. Plans they'd made began to unravel. Claire was humiliated. Her friends mocked her behind her back for losing the car she flaunted so proudly. She withdrew, quieter, angrier, her confidence shattered. And my parents? They tiptoed around me now. The guilt and the fear mixed into something almost pitiful. They avoided arguments, avoided my gaze. The balance of power in the house had shifted permanently. But here's the thing about revenge, it doesn't heal. The money came back. The power tilted. They were broken, yes. But so was I. Late at night, when the house was finally quiet, I'd sit in the dark and wonder, had I gone too far? Or not far enough? Because the truth is, revenge doesn't close wounds. It just makes sure everyone bleeds. For weeks after the car disappeared and the money shifted back into my account, the house was different. Quieter. But not the kind of quiet that brings peace, the kind that suffocates. The house of silence. Mom stopped humming in the kitchen. Dad stopped whistling when he left for work. Even Claire's loud, dramatic entrances were gone. She came home late, slipped upstairs without a word, and slammed her door shut. It was silence built from tension, a silence that vibrated like a live wire. Every meal was a performance. Forks clinked, plates scraped, but no one spoke. Occasionally, Mom would force out a question about work or school, her voice brittle, her smile trembling. But it never lasted. Conversation died quickly in the shadow of what I'd done. And every time I looked at them, my family, the people who were supposed to protect me, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing. Or maybe that was worse. Claire unraveled fastest. Her car wasn't just transportation, it was her identity. Without it, her friends stopped calling as much. She stopped posting selfies, stopped going out. One night, I overheard her crying in her room. Not angry tears this time, real, hollow sobs. For the first time, I wondered if I'd broken her. Not just her pride, but her. And then I remembered the messages. The way she mocked me, called me the family ATM. I remembered the look in her eyes when she flaunted that car like a trophy. No, I hadn't broken her. She'd built herself on lies, and when I pulled the foundation out, she crumbled. That was on her. At least, that's what I told myself. My parents' mask slips. Mom tried, at first, to mend things. She left notes on my door, "We're still family," or "Please let's talk." But I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because every time I saw her handwriting, all I thought about was her hand signing the withdrawal slip. Dad, though. Dad's mask slipped quickest. He wasn't built for humility. He barked once or twice, tried to reclaim authority, but the power shift was permanent. He knew it. I knew it. We weren't father and son anymore. We were opponents in a cold war neither of us wanted to admit was still raging. I should have felt triumphant. I had money back in my account. Their control over me had shattered. Claire was humiliated, my parents exposed. But late at night, Sitting in the dark, the question returned again and again, why didn't it feel like enough? Revenge had given me control, but it hadn't given me peace. The bank account wasn't a salve. Watching Claire's tears didn't heal the scar they left. Because revenge doesn't rewind time. It doesn't erase betrayal. It just replaces one wound with another. And yet, I wasn't finished. That's when I realized something. Revenge wasn't about getting even. It was about evolution. They had forced me into a corner. They had stolen from me, mocked me, broken my trust. And in doing so, they had forged something they didn't expect, me. The me who watched. The me who calculated. The me who struck back and struck harder. I wasn't the obedient son anymore. I wasn't the silent brother. I was something sharper, colder, someone they couldn't control. And maybe that was the real revenge. Not the money, not the car, not the chaos, but the fact that they'd never get the old me back. Now I want to ask you, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have taken revenge or just walked away and cut ties? Let me know in the comment.